The Galactic Council never expected the humans to walk away. For decades, they had been negotiating, debating, and at times condescending. Humanity was the last major species to join the interstellar stage, and to the Council, they were little more than an unpredictable variable in an otherwise orderly galaxy. Wars had been waged and settled, treaties signed and broken, but through it all, the Council believed in one truth: diplomacy always won in the end. So when tensions flared between humanity and the Dominion, a vast empire of warlike species that saw negotiation as a sign of weakness, the Council did what it always did. They called for peace talks. They invited humanity to the table, assuming they would fall in line, that they would agree to terms, compromise, and move on. It had worked before, time and time again. But the humans didn't sit down. They stood. Across the chamber, representatives from the older races, those who had been part of the Council for centuries, exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. The Council chamber was a place of words, not silence. Yet there they stood, humanity's delegation, staring at their so-called allies with an expression that sent a chill through the room. It wasn't anger. It wasn't desperation. It was something far worse. Resolve. The lead negotiator, a hardened diplomat who had seen the best and worst of galactic politics, placed both hands on the table, leaning forward just enough for the weight of their presence to be felt. When they finally spoke, their voice was calm, controlled. "We came here to negotiate in good faith," they said. "But good faith requires honesty." The Council remained quiet. The Dominion's delegation, seated smugly at the opposite end of the hall, barely hid their amusement. They had made their demands clear: territory, resources, the dismantling of human defenses along the border. It was an ultimatum, dressed in the language of diplomacy. The kind of deal the Council always pushed through, using the weight of galactic law and tradition. But the humans had seen through it. "You call this peace," the human continued. "We call it surrender." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Dominion's representatives grinned, their sharp teeth glinting under the artificial lights. To them, this was nothing more than posturing, one last attempt to bargain before inevitable submission. The human diplomat straightened. "We've listened. We've compromised. And we've learned." Their gaze swept across the room, landing on each race that had counseled restraint, urged patience, promised protection that never came. "But if this is what passes for peace in your council, then humanity has no place in it." The air seemed to thin. Somewhere in the chamber, a counselor gasped. The Dominion's leader blinked, their amusement flickering into something else, something uncertain. Without another word, the humans turned and walked out. The doors slammed shut behind them. And for the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council realized it had made a mistake. A terrible, irreversible mistake. The silence that followed was heavier than the Council had ever known. For a long moment, no one spoke. No one dared to move. The humans were gone, their footsteps still echoing in the vast chamber, but their presence lingered like a shadow stretching over every delegate in the room. Even the Dominion's warlords, always so quick to sneer, remained still, their expressions unreadable. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. The humans were meant to concede, to bend under the weight of tradition and political pressure. The Council had believed that, like every other species before them, they would see reason. That they would accept compromise, however bitter, because the alternative war was unthinkable. But the humans had walked away. An elder counselor, their robes weighed down with metals from long-forgotten treaties, cleared their throat. "They will return," they said, their voice unsteady but firm. "They are emotional, impulsive. Give them time to reconsider." No one answered, because deep down, they all knew the truth. Humanity had not stormed out in anger. There had been no shouts, no threats, no last-minute pleas. What the Council had witnessed was something else entirely. A cold, deliberate decision. A choice. A low chuckle broke the uneasy quiet. It came from the Dominion side of the chamber. One of their high commanders leaned back in their seat, claws tapping lazily against the armrest. "So that's it?" they mused. "They're finished with the game?" Their sharp-toothed grin returned, but there was something forced about it. Good. Let them go. They gestured around at the rest of the council. What are you all so afraid of? They have no allies, no fleets worth mentioning, no history of conquest. If they refuse peace, let them suffer the cost of war alone. The elder counselor's hands tightened into fists, hidden beneath the table. You misunderstand, they said quietly. This is not relief you should be feeling. The Dominion commander scoffed. And why not? The counselor finally looked up. Their aged, weary eyes swept across the chamber, taking in the faces of those who still didn't see it, who still didn't understand. Because humanity does not bluff. The words settled over the room like a heavy fog. And for the first time, uncertainty flickered in the Dominion's ranks. For centuries, the Council had overlooked the humans' history, dismissing their struggles as insignificant. They had studied humanity's wars, their alliances, their revolutions, and had drawn the same conclusion every time: an aggressive but ultimately reasonable species. One that could be controlled, guided, managed. But now, cracks had formed in that assumption. The humans had not stormed out in a fit of anger. They had walked away with the calm certainty of a people who had already made their decision. The galaxy is old, far older than we can imagine. Countless empires have risen and crumbled into dust long before Earth's first fire was lit. Ancient species have explored the stars, claimed worlds, and waged wars so devastating they became myths even among their own kind. Yet, in all that time, in all those endless cycles of power and ruin, one thing has remained constant: a quiet, unshakable fear. A fear of something inevitable, something unknown. Us. They don't talk about it. Not openly. Not where records could be found or where younger species might overhear. But in the deep, hidden places of the universe, in whispered conversations between those who have seen too much, the fear lingers. Not of Earth as it is now, not of the humans still stumbling their way into the stars, but of what we could become. There are those who claim to know why. A few rogue scholars, the kind who dig too deep and live too short, speak of an event long ago, before humans ever took their first breath. They say the oldest species, the ones who had already mapped the stars before Earth, had cooled, encountered something that left them shaken in a way no war, no disaster, no extinction-level event ever had. A memory so terrible that, even now, they refuse to set foot anywhere near our little blue planet. Of course, to the rest of the galaxy, humans are nothing more than an anomaly. A young, reckless species, still too small to matter. We fight among ourselves. We throw rockets into the sky like children skipping stones across a pond. The universe watches with mild curiosity, but nothing more. At least, not openly. But then something changed. It started with a single ship, a lone trader passing too close to the Sol system. A routine trip, one of thousands just like it. But when that ship returned, its captain refused to speak of what they had seen. The logs were wiped, the crew disappeared, and the trading routes around Earth grew suspiciously quiet. That was only the beginning. More ships came. Explorers, scientists, observers sent by the oldest races, watching from a safe distance, always careful never to interfere. And one by one, they left in silence. No reports. No explanations. Just the same unsettling absence of words. And then, one day, the silence broke. A distress signal. Weak, fragmented, barely more than a whisper across the void. It came from the edge of our solar system, from a ship that should not have been there. A ship belonging to a species so old they had seen civilizations fall before humanity had even learned to walk upright. A species that did not make mistakes. But the message was clear. The voice trembling. We were wrong. It's not them we should fear. It's what's waiting for them. Then nothing. The signal cut. The ship was gone. And the galaxy, for the first time in a very, very long time, held its breath. The signal had been cut, but the message remained. It echoed through hidden channels, passed in hushed conversations between those who understood its weight. The oldest races, the ones who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, reacted first. Quietly, without announcement, their ships pulled away from human space, retreating like the tide before a coming storm. Trade routes were abandoned. Long-standing agreements were severed without explanation. Space that had once been patrolled by alien vessels now lay empty, silent. But not everyone could afford to ignore the warning. On a cold research station orbiting a barren moon at the edge of the system, a single human outpost continued listening. They had intercepted the message, what little there was of it, and even though the official stance was to dismiss it as irrelevant, those who worked in the shadows knew better. It wasn't just paranoia. Something was happening. Something the rest of the galaxy was too afraid to name. Among them was a man who had spent his life chasing the unknown. He wasn't a soldier, not an ambassador, not anyone important. Just a scientist, one of many assigned to catalog what scraps of alien knowledge trickled into human hands. His work was supposed to be routine, buried under layers of bureaucracy. But now, the routine had shattered. He had played the message back so many times, the words were burned into his thoughts. We were wrong. It's not them we should fear. It's what's waiting for them. What did that mean? What could possibly make the most advanced species in the galaxy, beings that had survived wars beyond human comprehension, so afraid? No answers came. Only silence. Then the disappearances began. It started small. A missing survey drone lost in the asteroid belt. A deep space probe, its signal vanishing without explanation. But then, a ship, a full crew of trained researchers, went dark. No distress signal. No wreckage. Just gone. The station's officials scrambled for explanations. Equipment failure, navigation errors, space debris. But those were excuses, and everyone knew it. The old races had seen something in humanity's future, something they weren't willing to face. And now, whatever it was getting closer. But closer to what? Earth? Humanity itself? Or was it already here, waiting for them to notice? He couldn't let it go. He knew he should, knew that asking the wrong questions was a dangerous thing. But curiosity is a stubborn fire, and his had been burning for too long. So he made a choice. One that could not be undone. He bypassed protocols, accessed files buried deeper than they had any right to be. Old transmissions, incomplete data from ships that had come too close to something they shouldn't have. What he found made his breath catch in his throat. A pattern. A shadow, moving just beyond human perception. It had been there for years, watching, waiting. And then his screen flickered. A new message appeared. No source. No signal. Just words. You are not supposed to see this. Then everything went black. Darkness swallowed the screen. The station's lights flickered, casting long, shifting shadows across the room. For a moment, silence pressed in like a living thing, thick and suffocating. Then, a soft hum returned to the machines, and the emergency lights bathed the lab in a dim red glow. His pulse pounded in his ears. He knew he should step away, call security, report the breach. But his hands stayed frozen above the console. The message was gone, wiped clean as if it had never been there. No trace in the logs, no record of an incoming transmission. But he had seen it. Someone was watching. And they had made sure he knew it. A chime broke the silence. His personal comma. An encrypted line. He hesitated. No one outside the station had access to this channel. No one should be calling him, especially not now. The message was simple. Leave it alone. His breath caught. He stood, pushing away from the console as if distance could erase what had just happened. He wasn't paranoid, not yet, but this wasn't a coincidence. Someone had gone to great lengths to bury the truth. And he had just dug too deep. Across the station, others were beginning to notice the cracks. The lead communications officer had intercepted bursts of static on secured channels, distortions in the background of routine messages, something coded, hidden beneath the ordinary noise. At first, she dismissed it as interference, the kind that came with aging equipment and bad signal relays. But then the distortions started forming patterns, irregular at first, then precise, deliberate. Elsewhere, a technician tasked with monitoring deep space activity flagged a series of anomalies. Ships were still disappearing, but not randomly. Their last known locations formed a shape, a spiral pattern expanding outward like ripples in water. And at the center of it all, Earth. None of them spoke of their findings. Not yet. But tension ran through the station like a live wire, an unspoken certainty that something was very, very wrong. Then, the first confirmed distress signal came through. A mining vessel drifting far beyond human-occupied space. The crew's voices were panicked, fragmented, words cutting in and out. Not alone. Watching us. No way out. Then, a noise. Not static. Not a malfunction. Something else. Something listening. Then silence. The station's emergency protocols kicked in. Data was locked down. Communications filtered. Officials assured everyone it was an accident, that there was nothing to be concerned about. But the people who worked in the shadows, the ones who had seen too much, knew better. They weren't looking at a simple anomaly anymore. This wasn't just fear or superstition passed down by ancient species. This was real. And whatever it was getting closer. And then, without warning, the station's power failed. Not just the lights. Not just the computers. Everything. In the sudden, absolute darkness, a single message scrolled across every screen in the station, glowing in eerie, pale blue. You should not be here. The station remained in complete darkness. No emergency backups, no flickering screens, nothing. Just the cold, suffocating silence. Then, a sound soft at first, almost imperceptible. A faint, rhythmic tapping. Not mechanical. Not a system rebooting. Something else. Someone or something was here. He held his breath, straining to listen. The tapping was slow, deliberate, moving along the outer hull. Then it stopped. A sharp, high-pitched tone rang out through the darkness, an unnatural frequency that set his teeth on edge. It was inside the station now. The air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. His skin prickled. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but where? The doors were dead, the corridors just as dark. He reached for his personal comm, but the screen remained blank, lifeless in his grip. Then, a whisper. Not from the comm. Not from the speakers. You were warned. His breath hitched. It had no source, no direction. The voice was just there, like a thought slipping into his mind. And he wasn't the only one hearing it. Across the station, in every sealed-off room, every lockdown corridor, people were frozen in place, their heartbeats hammering against their ribs. Scientists, engineers, security personnel, all hearing the same impossible voice. You should not be here. Then, a sudden shift. The gravity flickered, an unnatural pull dragging everything ever so slightly sideways before stabilizing again. The structure groaned under the strain, metal bending, protesting. And then, the worst part. The station's main viewport, the one that overlooked the void, lit up. Not from any external lights. Not from human technology. Something outside was glowing. A shape barely visible against the blackness of space. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't anything recognizable. It was vast, stretching beyond the limits of the station's sensors, shifting like it wasn't entirely bound by normal dimensions. And it was watching. He could feel it. A pressure inside his mind, a presence that wasn't human, wasn't alien, wasn't anything that belonged in this universe. Something ancient. Something waiting. He stumbled backward, his breath coming too fast, too shallow. This wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to find anything. But maybe they hadn't found it. Maybe it had been waiting for them. And now that they had come too close, there was no turning back. A deep, resonant sound vibrated through the station, shaking the walls, rattling the air itself. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a message. It was a door opening, and something was stepping through. The station trembled as the sound deepened. It wasn't just a noise, it was a presence, something vast pressing against reality itself. The glow outside the viewport intensified, shifting in unnatural ways, folding in on itself like space was bending around it. It wasn't moving closer. It didn't have to. It was already here, in ways the human mind wasn't meant to understand. Then, the alarms blared. Emergency lights flickered to life, a weak and failing red glow barely cutting through the heavy darkness. But something was wrong. The station systems weren't supposed to come back online, not like this. His console screen lit up, lines of unreadable text flashing faster than he could process. Symbols, equations and possible calculations that twisted in on themselves as if they were alive. He had seen alien scripts before, decoded languages from species far older than humanity. But this was something else. Something that didn't belong to any known civilization. Then, the station's automated voice, cold, artificial, yet somehow shaking, spoke 3 words that sent ice through his veins. Incoming transmission received, but no signal was coming through. No data stream, no comm channel. The station had cut itself off from outside interference. Whatever this was, it wasn't being transmitted. It was just there. And then, the voice changed. Not the station's voice. Something beneath it. A layered, distorted sound, like multiple voices speaking at once from somewhere impossibly far away. Not ready. Not yet. The words weren't a threat. They weren't even directed at him. They sounded disappointed. Like someone watching a process unfold too soon. Like something waking up before it was meant to. And then silence. For a long moment, nothing happened. The station stopped shaking. The glow outside faded. The crushing weight in his skull lifted, leaving behind an empty, ringing void in its place. Then, the first scream tore through the comms. Not static. Not a distortion. A real, human scream. It came from one of the lower decks engineering. Then another from the security wing. Then another. Each one cut short, replaced with bursts of garbled transmission, voices melting into sound that wasn't quite human anymore. The station's sensors flared to life, displaying security feeds one by one. What he saw made his breath hitch. People were moving, running, then stopping, frozen in place. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, mouths open as if they wanted to scream but couldn't. Then, one by one, they began to disappear. Not disintegrating. Not being attacked. Just ceasing to exist. One moment, they were there. The next, gone, like they had never been standing there at all. The screen flickered again. More words, scrawling across the display in that same alien script before shifting into something he could understand. We tried to warn you. Then the temperature dropped. The air became thin. And something exhaled in the dark behind him. The breath in the dark was slow, deliberate. It wasn't human. It wasn't mechanical. It was something else entirely. Cold air brushed against the back of his neck, sending a deep, primal terror crawling up his spine. He turned, barely able to move, expecting no, dreading to see something standing behind him. But there was nothing. The room was empty. Yet, he could still feel it. The presence lingered, pressing against the edges of his mind like unseen fingers trying to grasp something just out of reach. Then, the station groaned. A deep, aching sound, as if the structure itself was reacting to something unseen. His console flashed again, and this time, the words were different. Not a warning. Not a threat. A choice. Leave. Or stay and see. His breath caught. What did that mean? See what? Across the station, the disappearances were accelerating. Crew members who had been frozen in place were vanishing, one after another, like something was erasing them from existence. No bodies. No traces. Just an unnatural emptiness left behind. And yet, the glow outside the station, the impossible presence in the void, hadn't moved. It hadn't reached for them. It hadn't attacked. because it didn't need to. The realization struck him like a physical blow. This wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a hunt. It was a test. A memory surfaced fragments of data buried deep in classified archives. The old species, the ones who had lived through something like this before, they hadn't been wiped out. They had chosen to leave, or they had chosen to stay. And those who stayed, he didn't know. No one did, because no records remained, no survivors, no ruins, just empty systems where civilizations had once thrived. A deep vibration rolled through the station again, and the lights flickered this time, not from failure but from something deliberate, like the station itself was waiting. The choice wasn't just his. Somewhere, deep inside his mind, the presence spoke again, not in words, but in understanding. Stay and become. Leave and forget. He staggered back. It was giving them a chance. A way out. The remaining crew, the few who hadn't vanished yet, had seconds to decide. And then, for the first time, the glow outside the station moved. It unfolded like something peeling away from reality itself. And for the briefest, most horrifying moment, he saw it. Not a ship. Not a creature. A doorway. Not to another place. To another state of being. Then, the final message appeared on his screen. Your kind was never meant to wake up this soon. And before he could react, before he could scream, everything dissolved into white. Light. Endless, blinding light. It wasn't just brightness, it was something deeper, something that stripped away everything he understood about existence. He had no sense of time, no sense of body. He was aware, but not in the way a human should be. Then, slowly, the light dimmed. The world reshaped itself around him. He was standing in the station, or something that resembled it. The walls were the same, the consoles flickered, the hum of machinery filled the air. But something was different. The weight of reality felt thinner, stretched. He reached out, touching the console, but the sensation was muted, as if his fingers weren't entirely solid. Then he saw them. The crew. The ones who had disappeared. They were here, standing motionless, staring at nothing. Their eyes flickered, changing, shifting between colors no human eye should ever reflect. And then, in perfect unison, they turned to look at him. He braced himself, expecting something alien, something unknowable. But their expressions weren't hostile. If anything, they looked at him with a strange sense of understanding, as if they had seen something beyond what human minds were meant to grasp. A whisper echoed in his thoughts. Not words, but understanding. They had chosen, and he had too. He looked down at his hands. They were flickering now, just like the others. He felt no fear, no pain, only the creeping realization that he wasn't the same anymore. Then the station shifted. Or maybe he did. A crack formed in the air itself, peeling open like a window into something vast, something endless. Through it, he saw the universe as it truly was, layers upon layers, dimensions stacked beyond what human senses could ever perceive. And beyond it all, the presence was waiting, watching. A choice had been made, not just by him, but by humanity itself. Some would forget, would return to their ordinary lives, never realizing how close they had come to seeing beyond the veil. But others, those who had stepped through, would become. He felt himself slipping, dissolving into something greater. He wasn't dying. He wasn't leaving. He was waking up. The last thing he saw before everything faded was Earth far below, untouched, unaware. The galaxy's oldest species had feared humanity not because of their strength, not because of their ambition, but because one day humans would see the truth. And when they did, nothing in the universe would ever be the same again.